So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the February Masterclass of the World Communications Forum Association. As you heard, public relations make the world go round. That's the reality. That's the real situation. All we are in public relations business, more than 50 people online now, and having wonderful speaker today, who I will introduce you in a couple of minutes. My name is Maxim Kara. I'm the president of the World Communications Forum Association. We started the masterclasses dedicated on public relations, marketing, social media, public affairs about 2 years ago. And since then, we have every single month quite interesting speakers, quite interesting topics. And I'm really happy that the participants of those masterclasses are more and more and more. From my understanding, these are the only PR masterclasses in the world which are free. And they're free because we would like, the management of the World Communications Forum Association, we would like that more people all over the globe know about our project, more people know how to manage PR much more successfully. Oh, what I said, successfully? And that's the big question, by the way. All we do PR, we start to do something, and then we don't know whether we will have success or not. And that's all our concerns. That's the biggest trouble we have. Otherwise, we have excellent strategies. We create plans for our clients. They're wonderful. Our clients, are happy. They say, wow, and this and that. And at the end of the day, when we should report what we did, then not very often results are excellent. So we have Catherine Fisette, a great professional from Canada, beautiful city of Montreal, speaking both French and English. So whoever doesn't understand anything precise in English, Catherine can do it in French immediately and then go back to English. And I'm very happy that she joined us today with more than 20 years of excellent experience in communications and marketing across Montreal, Toronto, Beijing, Shanghai, a founder of a beautiful company back 2 years ago, Catherine, and offering strategy planning, capacity building, and measurement services. The most important, which we will discuss today with our dear presenter, will be how to make our campaigns successful. Otherwise, we have excellent campaigns written on PowerPoint, on Canvas, or whatever software you would like to use. But at the end of the day, every single dollar invested by our clients should go back to them with $1.20 or $1.10. So with this short entrance, I just would like, entry words, I just would like to remind you that in April, we are, let me fix the camera. In April, we are organizing our World Communications Summit in Davos, Switzerland. All of you, dear friends, are invited. The ones who would like to be speakers, much more invited. We have here Jessica Kristeva, our executive secretary. Much better her than me, of course, and that's how it should be. So everyone, please contact Jessica. She will be very happy to explain to you how to participate, or most important, how to become a speaker of the World Communications Forum in Davos, April 10 to 12. With these words, I would like to thank very much to our very high appreciated speaker, Catherine Fisette, and to give the floor to her. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Max, and welcome everybody. I'm glad to have you on the line. So I'll just start by asking if any of you have ever heard the expression saved by the bell, sauvé par la cloche in French. The reason I'm asking is because we tend to assume that timing is a matter of luck or of happenstance, whereas we do, in most cases, have some control over time. The time that we invest in activities and the times that we use to manage our own schedule. So today, we'll focus on how you can tap into timing, which is quite powerful, as you'll see, for your own PR campaigns and in your own time management. Okay, so I'm going to preface this presentation by saying a few things right off the bat. I'm obsessed with applicability. So my hope is that you come out of this masterclass feeling equipped to apply readily some of the tips and the insights that you've garnered today. So the downside of applicability is that there's a chance that this may sound a bit general to you. If it does, and you have a specific question to address your own particular situations, reach out after the session via email. I'll be happy to discuss with you. Okay? There's a host of data in this presentation. This is curated content. So if you have questions, if you want references, again, reach out. I'll be happy to provide those. So before you start scribbling furiously, because there's quite a bit of data in this, I do have a handout available. So as I've just said, reach out after the session on demand. I'll be happy to send it to you if you wanna capture the most important and tangible aspects of this presentation. Now, the title slide says PR, but I'm gonna slant it towards PR, but this is also very, very applicable to all communication facets, okay? From change management to internal, to crisis management, media relations, obviously, content development. So you can all find something for you, I hope, in this presentation, okay? So timing is an ally, and you'll see why in a few slides. But it is not magic. We're not transforming a Todd into a princess here. Timing is no substitute for good content, for robust execution, or for sound measurement. It is there to supplement your campaign, to supercharge your arsenal, and give you an edge. As we go through the slides, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat box. We'll make sure to address them as promptly as possible so that there's not a backlog at the end, okay? So without further ado, a few years ago, I was working in a large corporation. And one day, a decision was made that I saw as clearly unfavorable to me, yet favorable to some of my colleagues. I'm sure you've all been there in some matters. I got very, very angry. And I pestered and I pestered against the decision up until the moment where I decided to retreat into a colleague's closed door office to continue venting with a bit more discretion. Closed the door, and then I vented, and it wasn't pretty. And I didn't even look up at him while I was spilling my heart out. Up until the point where he was so silent that I looked up in search for some sympathy for my misery, because clearly I was feeling it. He looked at me, he nodded, and he said very wisely, Catherine, it's not about running faster than the bear. It's about running faster than your friends. And then I thought for a second, because this was kind of bizarre, and then it hit me. It's not about the beautiful brand equity you have. It's not about how receptive your audience is, how supportive your senior management is, how large your budgets are, how engaged your teams are, how wonderful your coverage is. All of this helps, clearly. If you want to outrun the bear and potentially your friends, you need to be clever. How do you get clever? Several ways of doing it, for sure. One of them is by tapping into things that very few people tap into. To me, timing is one of them, and we'll demonstrate it today. So before moving on to the next slide, I'm just going to stop here and just remind you of one thing. I will appeal to your creativity. What? Oh, okay.
There was an echo. Catherine, can I interrupt you just for a second? Apologies. I mean, we have more than 60 people online. Can you switch on your cameras, please, if you wish? Because then we can see each other, then we can entertain. I hope that all of you have cameras. The one who doesn't have, me and Catherine we'll make a special fund, we'll buy cameras, we'll send them to you. And but I think it's much better that we teach other guys. It's a master class. It's a free master class. I mean, provided by our good friend, Madame Fisette, to you. So please switch on your camera. Even, I mean, Rodney, excellent. You're driving on your car. Take care, drive slowly, please, or stop somewhere at the parking area. And thank you very much. So please, the one who have cameras, switch it on, look at us, and listen very carefully. Apologies, Catherine, please.
All good. So everybody, I will appeal to your creativity right now, because timing is typically not really discussed at length, and we don't naturally think of timing as an ally in our campaigns. So again, appealing to your open-mindedness to expand on your horizons. Okay, without further ado, let's move to the current state of affairs. This is more PR slanted, right, as you'll recognize. Very brief overview of some variables of the market as we know it today in PR. So 61% of reporters are getting on average 100 pitches a week. That makes for a lot of work sorting through them. And if that wasn't enough, 73% of them report that there's only a maximum of 25% of them that are relevant. Okay? Meaning there's a lot of pitches that go to waste because they weren't targeted enough, they weren't customized and whatnot, and so on and so forth. I will add to this one important aspect. With the rounds of layoffs in media over the world that have been unheard of in 2023, reporters are now being outnumbered 1 to 6 by PR professionals. 1 to 6, meaning what? A lot of pressure on PR professionals to actually stand out, and a lot of pressure on reporters to do more than they've ever done before because they're the survivors not having been laid off. Meaning you have to be a lot more compelling, competitive, and clever, right? While all of this is happening, 16% of reporters stated that their relationship with their PR pros has gotten worse. There's probably many reasons for this. High turnover, garbage pitches. I apologize for the language. There's probably some pressure that the reporters are feeling, and maybe the PR pros are not really attuned to this, and they're pushing too hard and too strong. Anyway, the context is changing right now. It's getting a bit more hostile, both for the PR pros and for the reporters. Keep this in mind while you're thinking about some other ways to stand out, okay? So lo and behold, 26% of agencies reporting losing over 10% of their staff to burnout. That's just in the first half of 2023. You would say it's not surprising because PR pros are called on doing everything. And there comes a point where it's too much, right? We all been there. So by the way, this is not about how you mitigate burnout rates. It has nothing to do with this. And I have no cure for this. So timing is not a cure for any of that context. But it is one way of tapping into different aspects of communication and PR that can help advance your case, okay? And alongside the burnouts, well, as I said, there's been a number of layoffs, 6 times more in 2023 than in 2022, okay? So how are you gonna stand out? So let's look at time scale here. So researchers agree that there's between 10 and 15 timescales. Timescales are order of magnitude. Even though we work at neck-breaking speed sometimes, we're going to focus on 3 cycles right here. Week, day, and another one that's not on this slide that's called outlier cycle. I'll say more in a second. Let's talk about the 24-hour cycle. You're all aware of this, regardless of where you're dialing in today. This is a biological cycle that's governed by light. We all go through it. The thing is, most of us are underestimating how it affects our mood. So essentially, we're not the same at every day, at every hour of the day. Plain and simple. Regardless of what your work is, your work schedule, your chronotype, we're just not the same. And we expect sometimes to work the same. There's a problem. There's a gap. 7-day cycle, a little less known, because as we know, the daily cycle is governed by light. It's a biological one. This 7-day cycle is a construct, right? But thing is, different days of the week evoke different emotional responses. You'll agree with me likely that you're not feeling the same on a Saturday as you are on a Monday morning, right? We'll talk about this because there's far-reaching aspects to this. Last but not least, there's what I call the outlier cycle, a term that I coined myself to define some cycles that are not talked about at all, that could have an influence, but are more complementary to the two mind cycles we're going to be discussing today. If there's one slide or one piece of content that you should remember today, this is it. So timing influences behavior. We're clear on this. In three ways: mood, decision-making and risk-taking, and cognitive performance. Let's start with mood. Probably none of you is going to be surprised to see that we start the week at rock bottom in terms of mood, and then it creeps up as the week progresses. And that's regardless of what your work schedule is, regardless of whether you work day or night, weekend or week, or both, regardless of whether you're not working and you're actually a student or you're doing something else. Typically, people feel more free on the weekend, which probably helps to fluctuate with the mood. So as the mood progresses in the week, you hit a top note on Friday, okay? So why is this important? Because when you're planning campaigns, you want to tap into this. You want to tap into people's mood. Because, I mean, mood applies to you, but it also applies to all of your audience, okay? And your colleagues and your bosses and everything. So lo and behold, moods ebb and flow throughout the day and throughout the week, okay? Decision-making and risk-taking. So as you would have it, it's inversely proportionate. So if you're in a great mood, you want to hang on to what you have because you don't want to lose any of it because everything is going your way. You tend to make less risky decisions because you don't want to jeopardize what you have, right? It makes sense. So inversely, you're in a nasty mood, things are not going your way, you're more likely to actually take risky decisions because you're like, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to go for it. Why is this important? Because when people have higher tolerance to risk, they're more likely to receive positively all of your bold proposals and your plan. We'll talk about this later. There's a way of actually using that to your advantage. Note that Thursday is the lowest risk tolerance day of the week for everyone. So low tolerance to risk equal more conservative in the way you're going to take decisions and you're going to look at things. Okay. So finally, cognitive performance. Unsurprisingly here, when you're in a good mood, you perform better. You learn better, you memorize, you problem solve, you focus. Again, you can all use this to your advantage. Let's start with the 24-hour cycle here, which is a basic one. We're looking at a curve here that just covers from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., but it is 24-hour, really. I just gave you a segment, okay? So biological cycle, universal, governed by light. For morning people, people that are feeling at a peak in the morning, which is about 75% of the population, your peak point of cognition will happen around 10 a.m., okay? And your slump, the time when you feel most drowsy, tired, inefficient, will be around 2 p.m. So resuming this. So if you're a morning person, you're gonna peak around 10 a.m. and you're gonna slump around 2 p.m. If you're an evening person, opposite. You're gonna slump at 6 a.m. when it's hard to wake up and everything, and you're gonna peak at 2 p.m. Why is this important? Because the world is essentially meant for morning people, okay? And we see this at work and whatnot. So if you haven't done so already, I urge you to find out what your own chronotype is. So whether you're a morning or an evening person, there's a host of surveys that exist online that allow you to check this. They're free of charge, and you can get a sense of how to max out on your schedule. So I'm going to stop here just to let you know that even though we're all overwhelmed with work and communication and PR, I'm not showing you this curve to actually get you to be more productive during your peak and to add more things to your load. I'm suggesting that you become more mindful of your time and that you align to your body clock to be most successful in everything you're doing at any given time, because you'll find out soon there is a time and place for everything in the day. So you still see my screen, right? Just to be sure. Okay, great. Thank you. So why is the slum so dreadful? So the 2 p.m. for people, most people, because there's a host of things that are happening at that time when people have less concentration, less focus, and are a bit more careless. So there's more traffic-related accident, and you'll see how this all relates to communication in a few slides. More traffic-related accident between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., and between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Why? People get sleepy behind the wheel, and at some point they make bad decisions, and there's more traffic accident with sometimes dire consequences. Same is true for industrial accident. People don't follow protocol as well during the night shifts, for say, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. or in the afternoon. They're tired, they're a bit more reckless, and accidents happen. Same with medical procedures. There's less hand washing in clinics and in hospital during that slump period than there is at any other given time. And there's more issues happening in surgery sometimes. Hence the reason why hospitals have decided to put safeguards in place to ensure that doctors that are doing those operations during these slump times have more protocols to follow. Cancer screening, the same thing. If you're going for a medical appointment, something is nagging at you, afternoon, there's less chance of your doctor ordering cancer screening. So as personally, my appointments have now been moved to the morning for medical reasons, just to make sure I'm on the doctor's best shape, okay? Last on this slide, but not least, a wide study was conducted in Israel a few years back about parole hearings. And what they found is that if an inmate is scheduled to have a parole hearing in the morning when judges are fresh and they're awake and they're feeling good, there's more chance of this inmate coming out. The same profile, the same inmate with right before lunch hearing or right after lunch has less chance of coming out. That's called the hungry judge bias. So when we're hungry, we're tired, we're not making sound decisions. Okay, so far-reaching implication. So 7-day impact, also far-reaching implication on stock returns, mostly on emerging markets, because sentiment is related to stock prices. And we see that stock prices decreases after the weekend. So Monday is a big day. Suicide rate, on a more somber note here, I'll just spend a second. It's been reported that in several countries, there's more suicide, sadly, on Mondays and Tuesdays. Why? Several reasons. I'm not going to get into this. I'm not an expert. What I will say, though, is that there's a chance that people's mood is lower and they're not surrounded by people that they know in social groups and whatnot. This stat in itself probably doesn't mean much, but for prevention, it is crucial, okay? Because if we know when it's happening, we can do more to prevent it. Medical appointments, also important for a hospital around the world. Significant miss out on appointment towards the end of the week. So if you have a medical appointment scheduled early in the week, you're more likely to attend. If it's at the end of the week, less likely to attend. Fridays, a lot of no-shows. So hospitals have been starting to put things in place to mitigate this because it's a lot of wasted time and wasted money. So that's, in short, what the impact of these two cycles is on real life. And we'll get to what the impact is on communication. But before we do so, let me get to a 7-day cycle and what it looks like. Let's start on the Monday at the bottom left. So your mood is worsening starting at noon-ish, and your tolerance to risk is very good, okay? Tuesday, you're in a low mood, but it's increasing. Your tolerance to risk is decreasing. You get to Wednesday, you're in a good mood, but your tolerance to risk is low. You get to Thursday, I mentioned this before, good mood, excellent mood on Thursday, very low tolerance to risk. So you're more likely to make conservative decisions on Thursday than on any other day of the week. Keep this in mind. This is very important, okay? Friday, for some reasons that researchers don't yet understand, there's an uptick of both mood and tolerance to risk. So if you had one day to plan a bold presentation or a proposal, I would aim for Friday if you could make it. Or Saturday if you're working Saturdays. These are equally good days for you, okay? So before I move on to the next slide, I just want to make one point about Thursdays. A lot of people have heard this before and have said to me, so does that mean that Friday is sort of a canceled day where I shouldn't be doing anything because tolerance to risk is low? I'm like, absolutely not. There's a few things that requires high tolerance to risk for which Thursday is your premium day. What are those things? If you work in quality control, in budget and finance, in insurance, in crisis management, you're all expected to have high, low tolerance to risk or high conservatism. Thursday is your great day for doing this in the week. Outlier cycle. I'll just spend a few minutes here, more to entertain you than anything else. Let's start with the daylight saving. Some of you that have young kids have probably been impacted by those more than others. It disrupts sleeps. I mean, sometimes it disrupts your schedule a bit for a few days if you have to change time. But the fact is, the average person loses 40 minutes of sleep every time we change time. And that has far-reaching implication with heart problems and traffic accidents. If you're in the fundraising industry, people tend to also give less and be less generous in the days that follow a daylight saving. Okay, so just keep this in mind. It's not trivial. So let me talk about the temporal landmarks. I'd like to introduce this concept because that's an important one, and that's something you can definitely tap in your campaigns. Daniel Pink wrote a great book a few years back that's called When. It's a fabulous book. If you're interested in timing, that's the book to read. And he talks about what we call temporal landmarks. What are those? These are sort of line in the sands that we draw for ourselves, personally or professionally, to mark a fresh start. I'll give you a few examples. First day of the week, first of the month, first of the quarter, first of the return to school, first day of a new job, anniversary, birthday. So there are about 86 landmarks in a year, more for some, less for some, depending on if you add religious celebration. Regardless of the case, if you're able to time your communication campaign with a landmark that's recognized, you have more chance of recall. So let's say you want to start a diet plan or you want to start a new workout regimen. You have more chances of starting this at the start of the month or at the start of the week than on February 20 at 2 p.m., right? So that's the concept, okay? And then just a little bit of a wink here in astrology, and I'm not suggesting you believe in this or you're embarked in this, but astrology is a $17 billion industry a year. A lot of people will use astrology to actually time their day's work and their life events and whatnot. Just bringing up to you what we call Mercury retrograde. There's a lot of literature on this, although it is not science-based. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that for a lot of people, that's a time when they need to pull back on contracts, agreements, and whatnot, because supposedly that period, that lasts about 3 weeks, affects all of this, and it affects technology as well, okay? The next cycle happens to be in early April. So Max, I believe it is during the forum, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so something to remember, these are not to be evil eyes and everything. It's just something that a lot of people will count in. I thought I'd include it. But in my client briefing, obviously, I don't talk about astrology. I just wanted to mention it for you. Our job is to be catalyst of the human experience. So this is part of it for a lot of people. Okay, what's the impact of this on communication right now? 2 case studies, very briefly. An analysis of 26,000 earning calls was done in the US in the early 2000s. The intent was to see whether the early calls were more successful than the late calls in the day. And what they did find out is that early morning earning calls, those 8 a.m., 9 a.m., were a lot more successful than those that were held later in the day. For the same reasons that I mentioned earlier. People are in a better mood. They're not tired. They respond better. They engage more. So the earning calls that were held later in the day, more chances of abnormal return and temporary mispricing. Mood on X. At the time of this research, it was still called Twitter. So researchers analyzed 25 million of messages in 84 countries on Twitter at the time, both on the content and on the emoji side. Why? Because they wanted to see if the time of the day and the day of the week influence mood on X. And very consistent to what I've said to you, happiest tweets were done between 2 and 11 p.m., Thursday to Saturday. People are just in a better mood at that time. Weekend is coming. Saddest post, 10 a.m., 2 p.m., Sunday to Thursday, which goes to tell you that there's far-reaching implication for you, but for your audiences as well. And that includes reporter, by the way. So before I move on to the next section, which is tangible tips for you, are there any burning questions that I should be answering here? Jessica, I don't know if you want to point out anything.
You need to unmute.
So Catherine, there are no questions so far.
Okay. Super. I'll keep going. Okay, timing and activities. So what you would be aiming for is to be in an optimal timing space, which is at the junction of 24-hour cycles, 7-day cycle, and outlier, except for astrology. How do you get there? So let's look at communication traction for a second. So I'll appeal here to people that are in PR maybe, but also in internal communication and all other facets. A study was done 6 years ago that demonstrated that 59% of social media users shared a piece without reading it. This is a problem on two fronts here. First, because of misinformation. So people are carelessly sharing something just on the basis of the title without reading it. And they have their name attached to it, right? And second, it means that your metrics that you're using as proof of your effectiveness for sharing might be a bit jeopardized, right? So moving on to internal comm, average open rate for internal email is 22%. That's a bit, I was quite surprised when I saw this. And then I looked at the unread email in my inbox and I was like, yeah, okay, so 3/4 of email are not even open. And for those who are open, people read about 59% of the content to them. Last but not least, during the pandemic, 4 out of 10 employees indicated finding it difficult to be motivated at work. I checked recently, this has not changed. Obviously, this is no longer a result of the pandemic. It is a result of mainly financial insecurity, okay, and anxiety. Why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because I think we can take all the help we can get, because the state of affairs in PR is already very daunting and we're not getting as much traction as we'd like with our communication material. How do you get through to people? How do you stand out? How do you ensure effectiveness by using things that very few people are using? We'll get to this. So it's hard for us to encompass everything we're doing in a day as PR professional or communicators. So I've tried to categorize things in 3 buckets to make it easier to digest. So we're boosting mood, regardless of your audience. We're boosting mood, we're driving decision-making, and we're enabling cognitive performance, okay? So if you're boosting mood, if you're engaging, you're inspiring, or you're celebrating, when are you going to be doing things? So if you're trying to engage people, remember, people's mood is very good on Friday and it's very good on Monday morning. I would aim for the Friday when people are maybe a bit less productive, but they're happy to engage. So if you want to engage them and recognize them, this might be your day. This goes for internal and external, by the way, okay? If you want to inspire meaning brainstorm, hold some brainstorming session. Surprisingly, the best time to do this is during people's slump, when they're feeling a bit tired and less able to perform, because normal pathways are not working as normally. You become very creative in your solution finding and your ability to solve problem differently. So any day of the week for brainstorming in late afternoon, okay? If you want to celebrate, mood is enhanced on Friday. And that's the day when people are going to be most happy to enjoy with you and rejoice and whatnot. That goes for media as well, by the way. Cognitive outcome. What are these cognitive outcomes? You want to challenge people, okay? You want to give them some hard tasks to do. You want to give them some difficult information to digest. So people are clearly top shape in the morning. Okay, most people perform better between 9 and 11 a.m. That's when you want to time your deep work. And that's when you want to time your hard session when you're training people and whatnot. We'll get to training in a second. So Monday to Thursday, early morning, if you can help it. If you're informing people, you're sending pitches, for instance, or you're trying to inform employees of something, the best days for emails are Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the peak of email activity is at 10 a.m. and there's a drop around 2 p.m. So time your emails so that they don't come out the first in the line in the morning, because you're going to be in the clutter when people open their inbox at like 7 or 8. But if you aim for 10, there's not as many emails coming in. And then that's when people are going to be most engaged into your email. If you want to train people, like I'm doing right now, morning to early afternoon is best. So I shortly miss my time with you because it's past 2 p.m. now for most of you or later. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that you want the people that you're training to be sharp, to be able to retain information and to gather it. So it's best to plan this in your trainees' morning to early afternoon for the majority of them. Because productivity plummets on Friday, you probably don't want to plan on the Friday training if you can help it, okay? Now, temporal landmark. People see Mondays as a fresh start, or the first day of the month, or the first of the quarter. Use this to your advantage if you can to get people already with the right mindset to start your session. Decision-making outcome. Okay, that's very important for PR people. You want to convince people. Ever been negotiating? If you have, and you have some control over the time, you want to aim for a morning slot to make a great impression and to be sharp and for people to engage. Monday and Friday are best because people are in a great mood. You want to avoid Thursday, as I said before, if your proposal, your negotiation involves a bit of a risk, okay? So give yourself a bit of a chance. Monday and Friday are best in the morning. If you want to pitch, you want to generate interest. To make a good impression, morning is best. Avoid Thursday. Pitches to media on a Friday morning are typically surprisingly good because the most of the pitches that they get are Wednesday. So top day for pitches for media is Wednesday. And they have a high response rate by then, but they receive less on Friday and they're in a great mood. So try your luck on a Friday if you want to do something a bit different. If you want to elicit change, we're in a change management area here. Again, morning are best for significant decision-making and change of behaviors. Again, if you anticipate resistance, use Monday and Friday. People are in a great mood. And Monday, again, the fresh start of the week may help you. Okay, so that's for comms. What does it mean for you when you're managing your own schedule? You want to time yourself to your body clock. Plain and simple. You want to be mindful of your peaks and valleys of energy and try to do things at the time when you're going to be most efficient and productive. Planning for performance. You're learning and training. You need to gain new information as the trainee. You want to do it in your peak time. So any day of the week, pick your peak time, whether it's morning or afternoon or evening. And if you can do it at that time, say you're a night person and training happens to be in the morning, ask for handout and anything you can review later, maybe a recording to help you review that material when you're at your peak. It's going to make a huge difference in your retention. You want to do interviews and pitches, right? Alertness and energy level climb in the morning between 9 and 11, people at their best. So again, if you can help it, choose your peak time. That's when you're going to come across as the most prepared, the sharpest. It's going to work to your advantage. Analytical work. You need to focus. You need concentration. You need to do anything that requires brain power. Again, Monday to Thursday, peak time. None of this is predictive, by the way. You have to try it for yourself. If you find that you're most productive at 2 p.m. on a Friday and you're a morning person, float your boat. This is just some directive to help you adjust your schedule according to body clocks and to make it yours and to allow you to reclaim your time. If you're planning some creative work, you're doing some writing, you're thinking about new ideas, you're slump. It might sound counterintuitive. Go for a walk, have a coffee if you're in the afternoon, go do some sports, talk to someone, and then invest time in what you feel is a very drowsy period. It's going to work wonders on the creativity. And that's exactly why I appealed to your creativity in the first part of this presentation, because right now, for most of you morning people, you would be in your trial period, in your slump. okay? So try to bring out the creative side. So I get a lot of question about administrative work. When do I file my expense reports? When do I look at my emails? So too many people are actually spending a good hour of their day in the morning just scanning through emails. They feel that it's cleaning them out for the day and allowing them to have a 360 view on their work. I agree. The problem is if you're using your peak period of the day to go through email, this is not the most efficient use of your time. Okay, so I would urge you, if you can, to spend a bit less time on your emails in your peak and to invest time in deep work, analytical, and reserve the email scanning for times when you're not feeling as sharp. Okay, so any day of the week, ideally your slump period if you can help it. Team meetings. As we all know, some of them could probably be cut or removed entirely, but I get the question a lot. When do you schedule your staff meeting? Well, it depends what the outcome is. If you're planning on aligning people or on engaging them, on celebrating them, on giving them a challenge, on brainstorming, plan according to the outcome or the most important outcome. Ideally, you wouldn't plan them between 2 and 4 p.m. Unless it's really just a standout meeting for alignment, because people are not going to be very engaged. So before I conclude, I want to just bring out one single point here that's very important and take this as my sort of my brand manifesto here. I would encourage you, and I hope this presentation sort of awoken you to the need for us to broaden our horizons and look at what I call the fringes of communication. All those topics that are coming to us, exciting new fields that we will need to get into and to get upskilled on. Cybersecurity, cognitive biases, neurodiversity, creative view and measurements, timing, psychology of colors, generative AI. These are all the topics that are coming upon us. And if we want to continue taking up space, growing in our expertise, and being prepared for what's coming inevitably to us, we need to start investing in the future. And I hope that with this presentation today, I give you an inkling of how exciting this can be and how we should all be joining the discussion in talking about PR 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, if that exists. Thank you all.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's connect. And Catherine, merci beaucoup. It was a really very interesting presentation, a lot of food for thought, and I hope that there will be questions from the audience now. I mean, we started with 60 and we finished with 60. It's a great achievement. No one left. So please, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, colleagues, Catherine Fisette is available for your questions. No questions?
Actually, there were one question during the presentation from Geraldine. How important is timing when organizing an event?
I can answer a lot.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
it.
definitely.
Everything.
So it is very important. What you would want to consider is what's the best time for your audience to engage in the event you're planning, okay? So if you're planning to invite a number of people, plan accordingly. So if you have to have an afternoon event and that you know that most people are in their slump at the time, make it even more engaging. Make sure that there's a bit of creativity involved in it so that you tap into what curve or what phase they're in, if you will, right? But it is crucial in anything. It's not going to make or break your event, mind you, right? As I said, it's a supplement, but it's definitely something you should tap into if you can. And over time, if you find that some events perform better when they're done at a certain time, you may replicate this and start using timing. And the same applies to posts on social, by the way. If you start noticing that some posts at a certain time are working better, well, I mean, that becomes prescriptive for you. So start using this as a baseline to say, well, if I want more engagement, I'm clearly going to aim for the 10 a.m. slot instead of aiming for the 1 p.m. slot, right? So that applies to event as well. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does.
Great.
Thank you. Any other questions? So it's Again, everything clear.
And Victor, there is one more.
Victor, where are you from, Victor?
From South Africa.
Oh, so
Yeah.
Amando Ngabeto.
Fantastic.
Hello,
Thank you very
Victor.
much.
So,
Fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for a great presentation.
Thank you, Victor.
I think what I wanted to really understand is what you've shown is quite theoretical, right?
Yeah.
Have you had experience or your clients have had experience in implementing this?
Absolutely.
And sort of what kind of results
Yeah.
have you or your clients seen in implementing, this wonderful approach to communication?
Absolutely. So thank you, Victor. I do have a handout that, as I mentioned early on. So in the handout, you have tips on the specific days that you should maybe target your activities on. So I'll be happy to share that with you if you send me an email. But in summary, Victor, what you want to keep in mind is that if you want to engage people and you want to get them on their best mindset, the morning is probably the best time. So what I've seen in my campaigns with my clients is that whenever they're planning internal or external pitches to media or internal emails, they have best luck in the morning. So around 10 a.m.-ish, between 10 and 11 a.m., provided that it's not right after a long weekend, because sometimes people are just taking an extra days or taking longer to get back to work and get back to their mindset. These communication work best. There's more traction with them. There's more engagement. Same with social. I find that when you want to get people to think about your content and to interact with it, mornings are typically best. And if you want to push something a bit daring to them, Fridays are best. So a personal example here, Victor. When I am planning pitches for my own clients and future clients, I always target the Friday. Why? Because of what I said earlier, great mood, higher tolerance to risk. People are more happy to discuss at length idea that they wouldn't have thought at before and otherwise. So that's a good example. But if I'm planning a crisis communication plan that requires a lot of vigilance and risk mitigation, I'm going to aim for the Thursday, because the Thursday is the lowest tolerance to risk day. And everybody's going to appreciate that you're making the effort into being very, very careful about risk on that day. So I am really using a mix of the day and the day of the week and the time of the day to actually schedule my campaign in everything that I do now. So now that I've done that research, I'm applying it readily. And in all of my clients' briefing, when there's communication to be sent out, regardless of the audience, I always have a playbook of when they should be sending their material. And so far it's been great fruits.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Other questions? No, we don't have questions, so we have only answers, maybe. And one of the answers should be, so we all must come to Davos April 10th to join our wonderful World Communication Summit. We know it's expensive, but that's life. If you don't want to come, then we can do it online, but it will not be as much interesting as it will be in person. And we were doing this for about 15 years in Davos, and always it's a great opportunity to make a good networking. But to make a long story short, please apply to become a member, apply to become a speaker. If you want to provide any of our masterclasses, apply to become a speaker at the forum in Davos. And in the meantime, great respect to Catherine. Really, chapeau for the great presentation. We keep in touch, we stay friends, and as we started, let me say again, PR makes the world go round. I love you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.